Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome back to Get Your Shit Together podcast with a new series where I have women come on and talk about their journey of becoming. So the podcast is Your Journey of Becoming. And um, every week I'm going to have a new guest for you ladies to listen to and share her journey of becoming all of the meat and potatoes, all the things that are below the surface, all the things that we all go through in order for us to get to where we want to get to. So this is where the real women will share their real stories, the messy, magical middle part of becoming who they're meant to be. Because truth is, your dream life does not start when everything is perfect. It starts when everything is messy. And it starts the moment you say, I am done playing small, when you have had enough, when enough is enough. And if you're ready to say that today, grab your coffee, light your candle, and let's dive in. Today I'm joined by Mary Wagstaff, a woman who said, enough is enough, and walked herself out of numbness and overfunctioning and straight back into her body, her power, and her feminine freedom. Mary has this grounding, truth telling energy that makes you feel instantly safe. And you'll know what I mean. Like you can really exhale. She helps women who've been drowning in stress, spiraling in self-doubt, or numbing with alcohol reconnect to themselves in the most profound, practical, and nervous system honoring way. Now, let's listen to Mary's story. So, Mary, let us into your world and into your life and let us know what was that moment you realized the life you were living wasn't actually yours.
Oh, I love that question. I just wanted to say, I love that intro. I'm gonna take that and put it somewhere because there was so much goodness in there. And thank you so much, Yana, for having me on. Um, it's so interesting too how it's like you're here again, and I love the title of the show, Get Your Shit Together, because it's we meet that same version of ourselves again, where there's like another moment in time to get your shit together. And I kind of feel like I'm in that moment, but if I after I explain the moment that, I after going through what I went through where I felt like my life wasn't really, I couldn't recognize myself, these moments now of kind of getting my shit together again, it doesn't have the same weight. It's like, oh, I've been here before. I know exactly what to do. So you do become a different version of yourself where you meet yourself from just like a new place, right? And so the work, I always say we're planting seeds all along the way, and sometimes for me, sometimes I really shock myself with how quickly and easily now I'm able to accept and move through new phases of discomfort and not just become resilient, but really transform myself. Because if you're here right now listening to this podcast, you are a resilient person. We do not, as humans, we're always resilient, right? Because we make it. If you make it to the next day, you have some form of resiliency because we all had to go through things. But I do think there's a difference between resiliency and transformation. And I will share that what I think that difference is with you now. So I had my son. I was a little bit older, 34, when I had my son, and I was a very intentional choice. I didn't think I was ever going to have children, like just because I didn't think I wanted them, not because I couldn't. And then my biological clock was very much like, I need a baby and I need it now. And I even told my partner at the time, who was he had had a child when he was quite young, who I was stepmom to, and he was kind of done. And I was like, if you don't want to have a baby, I'm going to find someone else who does because I want to have a baby. It was kind of a joke, but, and it wasn't a manipulation tactic either, but he was very much on board with it. And we have this lovely little boy who's going to be 10 this month. And I can't even believe I've already been a mom for 10, I've been a mom for 10 years. It seems crazy. Um, I had been wanting to changed my relationship to alcohol pretty much since I started drinking. I had had moments, I have journal entries that I was, it just, it always, there was always these points in time where I would get a result from alcohol, where I wasn't feeling good, or I would do something that didn't resonate, that I was ashamed of, or just the impact of the drinking, where I was always like, this isn't me walking my talk. I've lived a very spiritual life since I was very young. And at the age of 18, I started down a yogic path. But my yogic path wasn't just doing asana practice, it was really developing the yogic lifestyle and really finding my connection to something greater than myself. And of course, spirituality is quite a journey. And so I was a young yogi, about 24, 25 years old when I lived and studied at what was an ashram at the time, and I was doing like a volunteer program there called Seva, which means selfless service. And I had been drinking pretty consistently and heavily since I was about 18 years old, pretty regularly, which is quite normal. It's like that's a very normal rite of passage in our Western culture to just go right into as an adult to, not necessarily drinking all the time, but to drinking being like what you do. It's like, oh, you're
Yeah.
21, let's go.
And
And
it's also
so,
like the legality of it as well, I guess, right?
right, yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's like a rite of
So
passage. It becomes that way because now it's legal. Now it's a rite of passage. Let's go.
yeah, let's go. And I'm like, okay, I have a whole other feelings about that now, right? What a real rite
Right.
of passage is, which
Hey,
is actually like questioning, like who you are becoming, right? Who you are becoming and giving you skills and tools to actually adapt to the next version of yourself as an adult versus here's this thing that just is a coping strategy that doesn't actually create a new version of you. It doesn't actually help you grow and expand, right? There's a real rite of passage puts you in a liminal space to help you grow and become that, be in resiliency and then create that transformation. So, I remember being in deep despair about my relationship with alcohol, and I wasn't like getting drunk all the time. I went to university. I would go during the weeks without drinking, but it was like just again kind of what you do. And my family drank. There was bonding there. I wouldn't even say like there was like a big alcohol problem that I was aware of with anyone, and I wasn't doing anything different than everyone else I knew. So basically, what I was doing was normal and seen
yeah.
as normal. And this is where a lot of women get, they're like, okay, this thing isn't resonating with me. It's not giving me the results I want anymore. And it's conflicting with my values, essentially. So even at 24 years old, I'm like, I can't live the lifestyle that I want to live and continue to drink. And I was in pretty deep despair about it. And I didn't drink all my time at the yoga, at the yoga ashram, but then I would kind of forget about it and I used it to like meet people. And so there was all these positive things associated with it as well that I just never learned how to do on my own. Because of course you can meet people on your own. And in fact, you create deeper connections when you're present and aware and questioning and clear and all these other things. And then so fast forward, I lived this parallel life as a yogi and a wellness practitioner, a mindfulness person for 20 years essentially. And then I had my son and I didn't drink during my pregnancy, but I couldn't wait. Instead of using that, knowing what I know now, instead of using that as a time to question my relationship with alcohol and just be curious about it, I loved my pregnancy. But the second he was born, like literally, my mom brought me champagne into the hospital. And I just want the listeners here to know, no, I don't have any judgment about any of this. I don't think any of this is intrinsically good or bad. I think it's all about the results that you personally want in your life and whether the things
Mhm.
that you are doing are helping you grow and are serving you or they're not serving you. And, maybe there was a time in my life, where that was serving me and it was working me, it was on my path. So I was drinking for the first couple of years of my son's life. And I just remember like laying in bed with him and thinking about like getting back to my wine and not really being able to be fully present with that bedtime routine and tucking him in and knowing that I, kind of smelled like alcohol. And there was some people that we hung out with that had a baby at the same time and kind of observing them and like drinking in this lifestyle that was just not how I wanted to influence my kid. And then there was a point where I would I was a part-time stay at home with him for quite a while. I had the luck, the privilege of being able to do that, which I think all women should have, be able to have that experience of being home with their kids if they want. But um, I would drink my coffee or my wine out of a little tiny coffee cup, like a little 8 ounce coffee cup. And one time, my son at 2 years old called my coffee red. And it was a stark moment where, because it was this red wine in a coffee cup. And so he's like, oh, coffee red. And I'm like, oh my gosh, even at 2 years old, he's paying attention to everything that I do.
Yes, they're sponges.
He's seeing everything. He's
Yeah.
noticing everything, whether or not he understands what it is or not, he's noticing it. And, you know, my mother, who I've been very close to for a very long, we've just been very close my whole entire life. She also isn't drinking now, which is amazing. But a lot of my adult life, that was a way that we kind of, connected and something we would do
Mhm.
together as I became older. And even with my sisters, we would sit around and have wine. And like I said, none of this is intrinsically bad, but there was a moment even with my mother after I became a mother where we would kind of do the same thing and talk about the same thing and rehash old memories. And we weren't doing anything new. We weren't growing. We weren't deepening our relationship. We weren't in a place of vulnerability, even though we think it takes down these walls. It doesn't actually help us go to the next level with even our closest relationships. And I remember feeling that way with my mother because the writing was on the wall. I was ready to I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore, but I couldn't figure out how to not do it. So those two things combined, like seeing the relationship that I wanted to change with my mother and then knowing I didn't want that with my son together was just like, okay, I've got to figure this out. And I had started working in the coaching world a little bit more and just learning more. I'd always been doing mindset, but I didn't, the mindset that I was using in yoga was just not quite the same as what I was doing, what I learned through coaching skills. And there was a woman that I followed, and I heard her say, my goal was to make alcohol irrelevant. And there was something about that term and those words where it didn't have to be bad or good. And I didn't have to put a label on myself, or I didn't have to make it mean anything about who I was. It could just be something like playing Nintendo and drinking
Yeah.
Mountain Dew that I outgrew. Like it just wasn't a part of my life anymore.
Yeah.
And I could have evolved from that. And there was something about that being an empowered choice that really, really shifted my perspective. And then it was like, I was started to do other things. I started hosting women's circles and gatherings and following a priestess path and learning about the divine feminine and all of these things of saying yes to new things, having a new perspective, putting myself in new rooms. Even though these people were probably drinking too, that didn't matter. I was seeing myself in a new light. And that was really what started to open up and shift things for me. So that was a long-winded answer to your simple question of what was the writing on the wall, but really it was becoming a mother and starting to question like what does it mean to be a woman and what kind of woman do I want to be? Because those questions, not with any ill intent of my mother. I mean, I had amazing female influences, but a lot of it was kind of through a masculine lens a little bit. Like my mother was a single mom and she's so amazing and I
Yeah.
love her and respect her so much, but it was almost like she was like always fighting, like
Because she
fighting
had
to,
you, right?
yeah. So anyway, that's how I got to where I am today. And I've never looked back. And this is what I want to teach women too is if they, and it's not just about sobriety, but it's like all of the other things that you're not showing up for. But that one thing for out of all of the things I've had to go through has created the most has disproved so many of my beliefs that I had in such a, in one container and I had to develop emotional intimacy and, mindset management and looking at all these other areas of my life through, because of changing this one relationship, because it impacted so many areas of my life that it was kind of like this one size fits all or it hit so many of the marks that
Mhm.
because I did that, then I started doing everything else like that. So and then the clear seeing that you get just through sobriety, I was like, well, if alcohol wasn't what I thought it was, because it really wasn't what I had believed it was, then what else don't I know? What other limiting beliefs do I have? And it really opened the door for me to just like be
Yeah.
wrong more often. be wrong about all the things I knew, frankly, and question, how I was parenting because of just something my mother had said and her mother had said and her mother had said. And then, and none of it's judgment, it's just curiosity and knowing like, oh, does this land with me? Is this in alignment with my values? And when you're battling something in your mind, typically it's because it's not in alignment with
Yeah.
who the truth of who you really are. And so that was what it was. I was breaking my own heart. And that's how I always describe it. It was like I would wake up feeling so disappointed that I did something that I didn't really want to be doing over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I figured out the solution and a switch flipped in my brain where I could see it for what it was. And then I created a system to help other women be able to do that as well. Because I thought, even if I quit drinking, I'm going to always want to drink. And that wasn't true. And so when I finally like had this really embodied shift of being able to have just clear seeing for like the distortion of my thinking, the desire for alcohol and the attachment to it started to fade, and then I made it completely irrelevant, and now like I could give two shits about talking about it. Or like, like we're worrying about it. I talk about it every day, but
Yeah.
in my own personal life, I'm just like, it has no impact on me or any relevance to my daily life at all.
Yeah, it's like once you see that inside the truth of what it is for what it is, you can't unsee it. Once you know something, you can't
Right,
unknow it. And then this is when you have conscious choice and you choose consciously which way you want to go about it, to do something about it or not. And for
right.
you, it sounds like it was just one of those that just knowing was enough to make that change to no, no, thank you. I'm good. Like I can talk about it all day, every day, over and over again, and it does not have any effect. It's just almost like it's just a word in a dictionary that has a meaning, but no
Right.
emotional attachment to it anymore because you have done that inside internal work that helped you and allowed you to get to where you are, to have that program as well for women that they can follow to get to where they're meant to be as well. That will lead them essentially in the end, it leads them, I would imagine, to having inner peace.
Yeah, I mean, to being able to trust yourself again. And I think, if I think about what was the biggest shift in a belief that happened for me, because I was just thinking about this as you're talking, it was I felt like it was out of my control for a long time. Like, oh, I say I don't want to do this thing, or I try to make all these rules or bargaining for it because, you associate your self-concept with it. And it's like, well, this isn't going to be the same. This isn't going to be the same. Your mind takes you in all these other places, and even though, sure, there might be, if you do something frequently with enough frequency and duration, right, you're gonna have a draw to it. So, addiction is a spectrum of dependency for varying things, and there's a varying reasons where the levels that people are at. But if you pour a drink glass of wine, every day when you get home from work, alcohol is an addictive substance. We do know that, right? It creates an a pleasure reward in your brain, which
Mhm.
creates a strong association. So if you have that association, even if it's one drink, and then you say no to that association, you will have some sort of resistance, right? And so there's like this big judgment and there's all this stigma around what it means to quit drinking, what it means to be sober, because we've associated sobriety with like this alcoholic, with this kind of picture that we've created in
Mhm.
our
Yeah.
brain. And
Yeah.
you have to go to these meetings and all this stuff, and none of that is true. None of that, it could be true if you want it to be true, but it doesn't have to be true. It's just one version of it. And so we have to really find what works for us. And so when I gave myself full permission to be a drinker, and I was like, well, you want this, you're doing it, the consequences, like there's no surprises here, right? Like
Yeah, you're a big girl. You know what you're doing.
you're a big girl. Like there's no surprises. And the moment I said, if you drink tonight, you said you didn't want to when you woke up this morning, but you're gonna have a drink. So if you're gonna do that, you know exactly how that's going to go. You know that like maybe you'll want another one, maybe you'll want three. You're going to know how you're going to feel in the morning. You know the thoughts you're going to have. And so if you do this, this is the conversation. So you have to change the conversation in your mind. If you do this, there will be no judgment. There will be no shame. There will be no complaining about it because you have to own those results. Like
Yeah.
fully own what it is. And it's not a problem because you're grown. You're not doing anything different than anyone else is doing, right? And so I did that. And then I was like, oh, this isn't as much fun. There was something about that, like defiance, right? Doing that thing that I was like, not supposed to be doing, only because I had made the rules up in my head. I was like, oh, you're supposed to be not drinking because you don't want to be, and it's not getting you results. I'm like, oh, but screw it. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to be bad, you know? But when I gave myself permission to like also not be bad and that it wasn't like a sneaky little rebellious thing to do and I was only hurting myself, then like all bets were off. I was like, oh, this is fucking boring, you know, and it's part of my language. I was like, this is like, I've like literally done this every day for 20 years, more or less. There's no surprises. There's nothing new. There's just a maybe a different background that I'm doing it in. I got the same people saying the same things, hanging out in the same places that are not inspiring me at all. And, you know, I knew what was inspiring to me. Like in the world of yoga, and I had traveled and I had started working with a spiritual mentor who was teaching me about the feminine mysteries and, you know, connecting with all these different archetypes and energies and deities. And, you know, I'd been doing energy work for years. And I was like, that's interesting to me. And again, maybe, you know, everyone's in a different place, but when you really, really unpack it, like what is interesting about, you know, alcohol or anything that you're doing, when you really question your own thinking of your own objection of why you can't stop doing something, it's like, well, what does that even mean? What does it mean that alcohol is fun? Tell me what that means. Because what actually happens? Well, you get a little loose, you kind of get away from your head, you stop really making sense, you're not listening to people, and you then eventually act in ways that you regret the next day. Is that really your definition of fun? You know, like if you really look at the steps of it. So that's just one example, and that can be very different for everyone. But my invitation is for anyone that's listening, whatever objection you have about why you can't stop doing what you're doing, that you don't want to be anymore, really just question it from a neutral place. Like, is that true? And what does it mean? Like, what does that even mean? And that's really what the power of coaching is all about, is really questioning our own beliefs and our perspectives to find out if they're true and if we actually like the answer. Because we hear ourselves saying the same things over and over and over again. And then we're like, oh, it's just a fact. But it's not, because anything can, because thoughts are just subjective. They're just interpretations of our reality, which is very, very narrow, right? Compared to the
Right.
whole like spectrum of existence.
Yeah. No, like, thank you so much for all that information, for sharing your story, because there's so much gold, so much wisdom in there for all of us. And you're right, like, coaching isn't complicated. It's essentially answering the question, or one of the questions that we are already asking ourselves in the back of our mind.
Right.
You don't hear the questions you're asking. Figure out what is numbing your awareness and causing you to not hear that part of you, not hear that inner voice of you that is already asking the questions or questioning things. Because when you really pause and you answer those questions in the best way, honestly, because I don't know if um, anyone is like me, but I would imagine a lot of ladies might be, is I can remember that question that I'm asking myself, but I can also quickly sometimes forget it because I'm a human being.
Right.
And that's why I always want to write it down. And
Hmm.
yet at the same time, when I remind myself that I can remember anything I want to remember, and I do remember anything I want to remember, then when the time comes, I remember it. Otherwise, it's like it's not even there. So, Mary, I'd love to hear of what version of you had to die in
Mm.
order for the woman you are now to finally live?
Oh, I love that question. Well, this is interesting. I what I feel like I did more of instead of a part of me that died, I feel like I invited that part of me into the present moment and let her know it was safe to
Mm,
come into this present moment. So it's like there was this younger, inner child version of me that felt like maybe she didn't belong, that she was ashamed of her choices and maybe being misunderstood. So, being in the yoga world for many years, and I never really, I always would go try to make connections in environments where, like, I didn't feel threatened or wasn't challenging myself to put myself around people that were challenging my own growth or, maybe even
mm,
inspiring me, honestly. And it's kind of sad to say, but where it was just like this neutral, not really going deep. And these people are hanging out at the bar, and I'm kind of hanging out at the bar. So I would make acquaintances going. I'm like a traveling yogi. Whenever I go out of town, I mean, I have a strong yoga practice. So I will do yoga all over the world. And of course, in my hometown, I'm like always at the yoga studio, but I never made close connections there because I had like a pretty intense drinking lifestyle.
mm,
And even though I know yogis drink, and I know like this one place in particular where I studied yoga in Portland, Oregon for a long time, I was young, and like the owners, they're like, they would have wine. I don't know what their extent of it was, but they wouldn't. And honestly, those are the people that are going to like judge you the least because they are from a place of compassion and like they're, accepting and all this stuff. But I was so ashamed of my lifestyle and kind of who I was, and even how I was showing up in the world, just didn't think I was good enough essentially to
yeah,
create those types of relationships. And it wasn't but I always have been a natural leader and teacher and organizer, and inspiring other people to get out and share their stuff, like seeing other people's strengths. Like that is and I'm also very compassionate and disarming. And, I have all of these skills. So I was started teaching yoga, and I was actually one of the things I was doing when I had my son too, which I was teaching a mama and baby yoga class. And I realized because it was different than like a regular yoga class, we actually got to connect a little bit more with the mothers more than you would talk in a regular yoga class. I was like, oh, this is such a deep, fulfilling connection here where alcohol's not even present. And wow, what if I did more of this? What if I did more of these gatherings? So it was really that that little girl inside of me that just felt like she couldn't be her authentic self, both without alcohol and with alcohol, that I had to really find the woman that I was today, or that I was, when I finally quit drinking, um, and say like, however you show up, it doesn't matter, right? Like I had to invite her and say, you're safe with me. I've got your back, no matter if you're drunk, hungover, or completely sober. Like, girl,
yeah,
you're amazing, and I've got you, and I trust you, and I'm here to listen to you. And so it was really, again, another conversation I had to have with myself so that she could feel safe to like, we're growing, we're evolved, we're coming into the present moment. And I'm constantly doing that work to just find out, what do I need to hear to feel safe enough? And I think this is a really important place of feminine embodiment, is creating safety, because this is what we look for in the masculine.
yeah,
We look for masculine containment, whether it's, in a partner or in a structure, in a system, in regularity. And especially if you're a woman who is an entrepreneur, or you're doing something different, that consistency isn't always there because we're
yeah.
making it up as we go. We're showing up to make the systems ourselves. So there has
Mhm.
to be some sense of masculine containment you find within yourself, or for me, often it's in my faith, and the deepening of my own personal faith of being guided by God, by a higher power. I believe, even though we think about the earth as Mother Earth and the feminine, the containment of the earth does have this structure to it, and it can just be like I can place my hands on the ground, like physically. Um, and so I think that finding that safety inside of yourself, which can also just be your own gaze, your own presence, your own validation, is so, so, so important. And I'm constantly still cultivating that. And I didn't really know at the time that I was creating this masculine containment for myself so I could be more in my feminine, right? And that's really one of the big switches for women around alcohol, because what I call it is empowered feminine sobriety, where a lot of times what I find my experience and what I was doing was women, especially women that are, high achieving women, leaders, kind of go-getters in their life. I mean, even mothers, mothers too, that most women are leaders, are kind of running the show, right? In some capacity, whether it's in their home, their community, their workplace, like they're what they say makes a big impact. What we say as women, how we show up as women has a huge impact on the environment. Um, but a lot of times using alcohol to embody in an inverted way, not in a real authentic way, to find and embody the feminine. So that it kind of the alcohol gives us permission to soften, to let our hair down, to relax, to be playful, to be silly, to be goofy, to be creative, to be sexy, to be all these things, when the work we really need to do to grow beyond that is giving ourselves permission to figure out how to do that on our own, that we can be playful, put away our to-do list. In fact, like burn your to-do list, because the only person giving you your to-do list is you. Because I've never once heard of a husband giving a wife a to-do list like a wife will give a husband a to-do list. Like, here's your little list, because I know you're not going to remember it. But anyway, usually the to-do list is ours to make, to destroy, or to do whatever. And sometimes having that drink is permission to, like, I'm not going to worry about the to-do list, but you can do that anyway. You just have to have a new thought that gives you permission to do that. And the
Yeah.
thought really is, I made the to-do list, I create the expectation, no one else is here, judging me or making a check mark for me. It's just me. I'm the one doing it. I just did a coaching call today where my client was talking about having been embarrassed. She had a moment of embarrassment because she did a presentation and she like did something wrong. And I was like, well, who knew it was wrong? Like, even her business partner, who
Right.
is her partner, her husband in real life, was like, I didn't know anything went wrong. I'm like, because you set the expectation.
Yeah.
No one
Do
else
that.
knows how it's supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
So that's a long answer again to that. That is the part of me. And like I said, I wouldn't say that she had to die, but I would say I really encouraged her to more evolve and bring her in. And then like the alcohol part that just faded away. That part of me that needed to, like, I found other ways to create those results without alcohol.
Yeah.
And I think even like it's a human nature to want to change our consciousness since the beginning of time. Man has been wanting to, alter its consciousness. Like maybe that's
Mm-hmm.
even how we became conscious, by eating mushrooms or something like that. That's another
Yep.
story. But to what degree? Like, is it for just curiosity and evolution, or is it now stunting our evolution? And I believe that, it is. It's like more to our detriment now. And I just read a statistic and I wanted to do a little bit more research on it, that alcohol consumption is down 54% more than it's been in 90 years, which is just a crazy statistic. So naturally, the conversation about sober curiosity and people just making natural lifestyle changes that aren't like, I'm an alcoholic and I've hit rock bottom, but is this as a pastime, is this serving me? And I think that a lot of people, we need to manage our energy and our attention even more than we ever have, because our attention's being pulled in so many places. Our
Yeah.
time is so precious in this modern world that is like, you got to really decide intentionally how you want to spend it and be in a control of it, or else it's going to slip by and you will live, maybe a life that's not very satisfying to you. and one that doesn't feel very peaceful. And so, yeah, I think on the other side of it is just more contentment and peace for sure.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, I'm actually curious to hear because there's a lot that when we are on these journeys of healing, of going through, like when we're talking about death, I'm talking about like death and rebirth. When the previous version of us in many ways dies and then we're reborn. Doesn't mean that she actually dies and she's
Right.
not forever. She's always there because past is always there. We can't just like we're no one without our past. And we're everything. And to some people, we're everyone and everything to them as well, based on our past, because it made us who we are. Um, I'm curious to know, what did you lose on your journey that you did not expect to grieve?
Ooh, I love that question. Um, the first thing that comes to mind, and again, I kind of think I transformed it a little bit. Um, But, if something did have to die, I would say because I'm this natural organizer and facilitator, one of the ways that I did that, even since I was really little, was I kind of always created the party. It's like, are we hanging out? Are we doing this? Let's go, right? And so I really identified as a party girl for sure. Um, and what I was able to do is just transform that into kind of, another way of gathering with people. I mean, I'm a DJ. I still go out sometimes. I don't stay up until 4 a.m. like I used to. But I do go out and dance. I do stay up late occasionally. I guess, I mean, if there's anything, I think that some of that, it's hard to say. And maybe I initially grieved it and I kind of got over it because I don't feel like I miss it anymore. But maybe it was that, younger version of myself, which was evolving anyway into motherhood, but the kind of like festival life, partying, um, that version of myself where it's like you kind of get to check out from society altogether when you go into these environments, because I would love to go to festivals and gatherings and music, and it's not, I can still do that and I've done it many times sober. Um, but I guess there is part of that, especially when you're under the influence or experimenting with even other drugs, that you're just like, you create this like bubble, this whole new world, this whole new experience. And interestingly enough, sobriety does that too, especially when you're looking on the outside through to other people. You're like, wow, I'm actually in my own little bubble and own little world here. So I think there was part of that I did have to grieve a little bit. But to be honest with you, I wanted to make this change so deep, so much that it was so much of it came with like deep catharsis. And once I gave my self permission to step into this new version of myself that I had been wanting to be so badly, this new, more mature version of my whole authentic self as a woman. I mean, I really just had to grieve, I guess maybe my maidenhood, if anything. Um, but again, it was welcomed. Like I was so ready for it. But I did have to take personal responsibility. It was like once you take personal responsibility for all of your goals and all of the outcomes, you also have to take personal responsibility for your results. And there's like no more victim blaming anymore. And even now, there's times where I see myself being like, it's not working, whatever it is. And I'm like, nope, I'm in charge of this. And that was one of my big values that I created something called, I do something with my clients called creating a life intention. And I do it every year, which is basically a values assessment. And it's like your personal manifesto to make decisions from. And so it was like, I didn't even really live in my values, right? And so I guess I had to like grieve this person of me that just didn't have to take personal responsibility and just lived like kind of footloose and fancy free. I mean, I'm still pretty spontaneous, but yeah, the part of me that had no responsibilities. There was definitely a death moment. Are you familiar with the goddess Morgana or the Morgan?
No.
So she's like a um she's not Celtic, but she kind of comes from the world of Avalon and maybe more like Celtic mythology. So she's a dark goddess. She is a mother goddess. She's a triple goddess. And I had been working with her at the time. She transforms into, like a raven or a dark bird. And she is the mother that comes, just like Kali, which will come and say, she's the mother of like death and rebirth. And she came to me because I had been on a journey for about, I would say total, it was 18 months, about 18 months when I started down my priestess path, started really studying the divine feminine, was really like, when I was like, I'm serious about changing my life and I know alcohol has to go, right? I was like, that
Yeah.
was just one piece of it. And the Morgan came to me like this hovering dark goddess in a dream. I've never had a dream like this since or before. And it was so vivid and it was so real. And she just said, enough. If you do not change this, you will die. Like you will die. So like this part of you has to die or you will die. And it was such a stark moment for me that I was like, okay, here she is. Like this is like the real deal. And I received the message loud and clear. And kind of from that point on, things became much, it was just like it was the writing was on the wall. It was going to happen. It was just giving myself enough time to be in a new mindset and to do the work, do the real mindset
Yeah.
work where that I finally was able to just set it down. And then I've never looked back. I started facilitating women's circles and deepening my priestess work and started my bit coaching business. And yeah, but there was that part of me that I did have to grieve for sure. I haven't thought about that much, so thank you for asking me that question.
No
But it
problem.
was it was relatively easy at that point because I had been, I was holding on tight to that, but it was like in my head, it wasn't even fun anymore. It was so
Yeah.
secretive that it was just like me and me. And I'm like, I can't even share this part of me anymore with the way I want to be in my life. I want to share new parts of me. So, but
Hmm.
yeah, party girl. I'm still
Yeah.
a party girl though, man.
Well, in different ways,
I
right?
just do it early. I just go to bed early. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I go to bed like 9 o'clock, 9:30. I'm like one eye
You
open,
know
the
it,
other
girl.
closed.
I know. Well, it's like, I'm like, well, I've got nothing left. I don't even know. I went out one time in Portland because I live about an hour and a half from Portland, Oregon. And I went down to go see this DJ that I love. And he was the headliner. So they put the headliner on last. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go to sleep and wake up at like 1 a.m.,
Wow.
drink a Red Bull or something to be able to go see this person because there's no way. And I stayed, I didn't have to do that. I went to the whole thing but I stayed for like 20 minutes because by the time I got there and he came out, I'm like, I'm done. I don't even know how I can do this. So anyway, it's fun. Well, and that just shows you too. I mean, I'm older now, I'm 44 years old, but it's just most of the time when I was drinking, it was giving me the energy, like overriding my body's natural rhythms. And
Yeah.
just, it's like I'm just staying up just to drink. Nothing else is actually happening. The only reason I'm awake right now is because I'm still drinking. Like that is the only reason. If you have like a little party night or it's a Friday night and everyone's hanging out or whatever it is, I'm like, why am I still awake? Or you go camping and everyone stays up late but you're only up because you're just drinking. And if the drinking stopped, everything else would stop because everyone really just wants to go to bed for the most part. Or you do the campfire and you go to bed at 10 o'clock instead of 1 o'clock or whatever it is.
Yeah, but it's also similar like where if you're drinking with a group of people, the party stops when everybody stops drinking. Like
Hmm.
that's literally what it is.
Yeah. Or everyone
Like,
passes out.
right? Like I got my partying out of this is my system when I was young, but
Yeah.
it didn't take me that long to get that out of my system to go partying, to go to a club. I did it for I think what 2 years maybe, and then that's it. And then
Yeah.
after that, ended up getting engaged and then got married at 21.
Yeah.
So really different life, right? And at the same time, I can't understand addiction because we all have addiction in our life, and we all
Mm.
are like it's human nature to be addicted to something that
Mhm.
relieves something for us and or allows us to be on throughout the whole entire night and stay up and party where you don't even need a Red Bull. Like you got alcohol, why would you? And then of course they
I
come up with like, why don't you put the two together? And then they end up in the hospital with heart attacks, right? It's like,
I've done that. I haven't been in the hospital with a heart attack, but I have had Red Bull and alcohol together. That's hilarious. I
yeah,
know. It's like, what else can we create? But it's so true. And, and one of my missions as a coach, as a mental health like provider, and as a wellness practitioner and just a woman who wants to support other women is to normalize addiction because it has so much
yeah,
stigma in whatever way that shows up for you. And to normalize our human emotions. Because if we normalize our human emotions, anxiety, depression, anger, rage, whatever it is, then if we don't make those a problem, then we might not need to replace them or find that same relief. Like I was just talking about this on this coaching call that I did, and I shared it yesterday in some content, which was a woman that I talked to, I was like, what's the worst thing that can happen if you don't drink? She's like, well, I won't be as much fun. And my first answer is question is so what, right? Like, so what if you're not as much fun for a moment? Who are you being performative for? Like, if you want to be fun and you give yourself the opportunity to be naturally fun, then maybe you're in a fun moment. Maybe you're not in a fun moment, right? And so, as women, we're using alcohol to change the way we naturally feel, where so what if we feel that way? And if we aren't honoring our own selves, it's like we think that the world is oppressing us by standards and things. It's like, well, we gotta start with what we have control over. And if you're
yeah.
oppressing your own emotions and not honoring them and not validating them, you cannot expect the world to validate them for you if you're not doing it first for yourself. So
Yeah.
that's like the first point of coaching is like, well, so what if you're not that much fun? And is that actually true? Because what happens on the other side of it? Well, for that next day, you're probably not going to be fun either for your kids or whatever it is, right? And this isn't from shame, but we want to look at the big picture of like, oh, I won't be fun for like 45 minutes. What does fun even mean, first of all? Like I was saying that to you earlier. And maybe that's not even true, right? Have you even given yourself a chance to be fun and like see what else that could look like for you at this phase in your life? And that's just one example of how our brains, give us these objections to why we can't do the thing that
Yeah.
we want to
Yeah,
do.
our brain is wired to keep us comfortable, which
Yes,
is
and
also
familiar.
safe, right? And
Yes,
familiar, comfortable, safe. And unfortunately, the familiar and comfortable and safe is not always actually good for us. Sometimes I know many women who stayed and still sometimes to this day stay in situations or relationships that don't help them, that
right,
drain them, that are not good for them. But at the same time, yes, I know it's my own observation, it's my own quote unquote judgment, but or my perception, right? But at the same time, there is truth behind that because they talk, because they share as well. And it's not, and when it comes to addiction, a lot of people won't even talk about it at all.
right.
Like
There's so much shame. Yeah,
there is a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of other things that are attached to it. And they're too, I'd rather not deal with it. I'd rather keep drinking because it's normal, it's okay, and it's what it has been put into us as a program throughout the whole entire world. That's why if we really think about it, alcohol is a word that unites us all.
Hmm.
Like think about it. You say alcohol
Yeah.
in any language, it's alcohol, and as well as pizza. So I mean, we can.
You just substitute with pizza. I love
So
that.
right, and then mom and dad are also universal. So thinking about these words that are universal. I mean, yes, we can also
I
think
love
about why
that
pizza is
perspective. I've never thought
universal.
about that.
But thinking about it and exactly like that perspective, and that's why I love these conversations because you've said many things that are kind of shifted my perspective. And I'll say things and then we learn from each other. This is the purpose of this podcast as well, for both of us to share and say things that somebody else who is listening will be like, oh, okay, I didn't think of that perspective. But at the same time, there are people who, there's people who will talk about different types of addiction. Like, for example,
Hmm.
for me, I personally would say at this point that I am addicted to Netflix. I love Netflix and I can have it on in the background as I'm cleaning or cooking or doing things where I'm not even like glued to watching it. Like, I'm not even like watching it. I'm just like hearing it in the background. It's almost like just so that way it doesn't have to be silent.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean I don't have silent times and silent days. I do. It just means that I have Netflix on very often.
Hmm.
And I don't know, it's like I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg, and I don't know if it's something that I started first or I just picked it up from the kids. Because you know how the kids are always on
Right.
the device walking around. So it's maybe like I don't know if I picked it up from them and started doing that. But at the same time, when my family's home, phone is down, everything's down, face down, and like everything is off. It's more so for the mornings that I like to enjoy watching my Netflix as, drinking the coffee, planning the day, doing different things. So it's not that it's getting in the way, it's that I know that this is like my go-to. This is like my wine,
Hmm.
right? And then for other people, it might be even exercise. For other people, it might be doing way too much for their family, for their kids. And then I've been addicted to it. And then there's another addiction that at when I was going through my dark time, I was listening to a lot of motivational speakers, and we all know Tony Robbins. There's something that
Hmm.
Tony Robbins said in one of his motivational speeches where he was talking about that we human beings, when it fills two or more of our basic needs, we become addicted to it. And
Yes.
that also means that we become addicted to feeling sad, to be depressed. That sometimes what happens that yes, there is that chemical imbalance of depression, but sometimes we become depressed because it fills more enough of our needs that we
Hmm.
become addicted to feeling depressed. So therefore we do become depressed. And and I could say that this is what I went through without even realizing it. And it's not to say that whoever's going through that, the depression isn't real and it's really surface. No, like, it's real and it's deep. And it comes from many different places in the past. And it just accumulates. Is that it comes from focusing too much on the darkness and not enough or not at all on the light. Right. So that
Right.
becomes also addiction.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
it's like you were saying earlier too, that familiarity and that, I would say too, like the basic need is the safe is that sa sense of safety where we can become any chemical, right? Emotions are created by chemicals that are released in our body. And so when those chemicals are in our body, we get used to feeling those. They become
Yeah.
familiar. They become they become our safe place, even to our detriment. And I think
Yep.
what has to happen a lot of times, and it doesn't have to get to this place though, is the pain. I'm sure you've heard this before said in a similar way, but it's like the pain of staying the same is outweighing the pain of change. And that's really what a lot of times where people have to come to is like whatever that thing is. But as a person who has a growth mindset and is kind of evaluating, okay, how am I spending my energy? Am I placing my time? Are there things in my life that are, taking more from me than they're giving? Like, and this is something that I think that's come to my mind a lot this year as a woman who has a lot of different interests. I've got lots of different things I want to do. So I have to be very diligent about decision making ahead of time. I can't just be jumping from one thing to the next. I have my relationship with my son is so, so, so important. It's the most important thing to me. So when have time with him, I want to be fully present with him as well. So it's like, where am I leaking energy? Where am I with my kid, but my thoughts are over here. And of course, that has to happen as a mom. We have to do multiple things sometimes, but, so something might not be causing you so much pain. The Netflix in the background. Like it's probably not like really creating suffering in your life, but it's something that you're aware of. And it's like, let's like be curious, let's just get curious. Like what shifts if I don't have this? Now, at first there might be a little resistance because you're like, oh, it's really quiet. No one's home.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like,
But
ooh, it's
am I
quiet. No,
actually
no.
able to focus more or, whatever it is like, and that's where I tell people to start. You don't have to be like, I'm making all these rules. I'm never doing this. Da, da, da. It's like, no, let's just get curious. Let's see how this goes. And so I always say, look for the opposite of what, with drinking, for example. I always tell people, look for how it's better. Go out with the intention of if I don't drink tonight, instead of focusing on what, the fear of missing out and like, oh, it won't be fun or I won't be able to do this or that, just intentionally look to disprove your beliefs. Why is it better, right? The same with the Netflix. Why is it better if I don't have the Netflix on? And then force your brain to find the reason why, because we can solve for anything if we want to. That's what confirmation bias is all about, right? We go out into the world and we look for evidence to prove our beliefs true. And so when we know what our beliefs are, but our beliefs aren't serving us, that alcohol is whatever, the best version of my life, we have to go and intentionally disprove them, which you
Yeah.
can do. We know we have the internet. You can go find evidence for anything on the internet to prove your beliefs true, right? We
Right?
know this is
Exactly.
possible.
Or just,
So go and prove the beliefs that you want to be true, true. And this is easier said than done sometimes and this is what the power of coaching is that sometimes you don't even know what your beliefs are. You just think they're facts. You have blind spots. So, listening to motivational speakers, getting a new perspective, listening to this podcast, going and getting a coach, or even watching someone else be coached is really powerful where you're like, oh,
yeah.
shit, I didn't realize that, right? So, getting that shift of perspective for someone to pull out and say, is that true? Is the most powerful thing you can do for yourself,
Yep.
with the willingness. You have to have the willingness to want to believe something new or it won't work. And that's and then the other option is that you're kind of forced into change because it's just gotten too hard to maintain and your nervous system is overloaded, you're burnt out, you have a panic attack, and you're having a physical manifestation of an unregulated nervous system. And then usually that can also get people to make some lifestyle changes and start to have to examine, because lifestyle changes alone aren't, like there's many people that don't drink and haven't drank for years, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, but still want to. And that is an experience that sounds really sad to me. And I personally don't believe it's because of something that's different about them than it is about me. I personally believe it's because they haven't explored their mind enough and they've centered all of their change around alcohol instead of centering their change around themselves and empowering themselves to believe something new. Because we can always believe something new. And I believe that is a choice.
Yeah.
There's more to the story of addiction, but in its most basic needs, I do believe that after 10 years of sobriety if you still want to drink, then there's more available for you. There are more resources available for you that you do not have to be in that experience. Now, I'm not saying you can drink and not go right back to being addicted. I'm not saying that at all. But the desire to even want to be in that lifestyle or thinking you're missing out on something that everyone else can have that's normal is not a mindset that is required at all, and in fact is very limiting. So
It almost sounds
that's
like a punishment, or you're
it's a
punishing yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is a punishment, and that's why I don't believe in labels or rules or counting days. Now, for some
Yeah.
people, if it saves your life and it gets you out of it, and you need to declare I'm an alcoholic, and you need to have that so that you don't go back ever, by all means, save your life, right? Save your life,
Yes.
save your family, do whatever. Um, but I do believe that voice inside that says, "Oh, it's not a big deal. You can have a drink. You can have two drinks." That can be eliminated with the right cognitive therapy, essentially. But you have to want that, and when you get into that mindset, it can be scary for some people to think, oh, I can just give myself permission to just be me and to not think I have to have this lifelong label, because that becomes comforting too. It becomes this masculine containment. Like I go from being a drinker to being an alcoholic, and so now I have this label to kind of use as my self concept instead of just like being myself. So that's what I always tell people. You don't have to go from being a drinker to being a sober person. You just get to be more of you, no label required, right? Like I just use the term sobriety because it's like it's known and it's easy, but I don't really consider myself that. I just don't drink. It's just like a choice, like anything
Mhm.
else. So, and I think that's important for people to know. I think it's important for people to know they get to do this on their terms, however they
Yeah.
want to, and there's no right or wrong way to do it.
Yeah. And I also know people who don't drink at all. They
Right.
drank a little bit. It's not that they're alcoholics, it's that they just never
They never
never liked it.
drank.
Never. And why? Why do you have to feel pressured? And this is the other
Hmm.
part, right? That when it comes to
Hmm.
alcohol, and it's almost normalized in every culture, and that in some cultures it's normalized to a point where they'll give certain alcohols to the children, to the
Right.
little babies, to help them go to sleep. But now, what are the consequences of that, right? Um, which of course we won't get into. But it's certain things, and also wasn't it like what is it, 1930s, when doctors used to use alcohol as prescribed medication, but prior to
Right.
that it wasn't even legal,
I know it was like prohibited. Yeah, I know
right?
it's amazing. Well, and that's the thing too. Like, that's what the mind will do. The mind is going to find any, is going to create the belief that's going to help you feel the least amount of pain, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So I've had people
Comfort.
talk about that. Oh, in this culture, it's normalized at a young age, so it's less of an issue. And I'm thinking, that's BS, first of all, like in my opinion, because there's you get addicted to it. If it's that normalized, it's going to be a part of your life forever, and it's going to be way harder to change if that continues to be a part of your life. Now, for some people, I know people that grew up with families whose parents both drank and they didn't because of that, right? They stayed
Yep.
away from it. So when something creates a little resistance inside of you, when you have a new belief, when something's presented to you and you want to resist against that, whether it's a political belief, a spiritual belief, any belief, I think the best thing to do is to question, what am
Yeah.
I making that mean about me? Why is that bumping up against me? What about that is rubbing me the wrong way?
Yeah.
And can you be open to two things being right at the same time, right? I mean, I'm open to that. For me, I'm not going to make any rules. I have a lot of beliefs about alcohol that I know are subjective, that are my own beliefs, but they serve me well. And I don't give my clients my beliefs, but I will give them new perspectives, and they come up with their own beliefs. And there's no right way to live your life. I truly believe in sovereignty, but what I do believe is that you can't change alcohol enough to create a new, like you can never change what alcohol is in its own form, right? It is this liquid that is a addictive substance. It's a neurotoxin. Like that is what it is. And you can't make enough rules about it to change how it affects you. You
Yeah.
can decide, I'm going to resign myself to the impact of it and just be okay with that. You can do that, and that will probably lessen a little bit of the stress that it creates in your life instead of beating yourself up about it. But is it worth it? What are you getting from that? So
Yeah.
all you need to ask yourself is, am I getting the results that I want from anything I'm putting my attention and my effort into? Right? And if you're not, well, maybe you change your mind about it or you get to do something new. And that is the radical responsibility that we have to take first before, and that's really how we change the world. It's like we want world peace, we want to make an impact on the world, we think we want to, like, all these things that are out of our control that are so awful and sad and scary. Well, the best thing we can do in this moment is to ask yourself, well, how am I showing up? Am I showing up in the beauty way? Within the beauty way, to me, is always leaving things better than you found it. Am I
Yep.
showing up and making these little things and holding the door open for someone or putting back the shopping cart or whatever. And we have to look there first, I think, before we look out and start pointing and blaming other people for why our life isn't the way we think it should be. And that is the power of the work that we do, that we
Yeah.
get to do.
I absolutely love that. And I could talk for hours on the topic of and the truth of people not taking responsibility for things in their life and for their life and just blaming and finding different ways to blame the outside world. And that is another common program that we have throughout the whole entire world, if you also think about it. The
Yeah,
good girl conditioning as well. Good girl, good boy conditioning is the same, pretty much the same to the core throughout the whole entire
right.
world. Um, right, so there's a lot of different conversations we can go from here. But as we're wrapping up now with the podcast, I'd love to actually ask you, because I love to understand women and how they see and view different things in their life. But I would love to know, what is that something you're proud of today that the old you would never believed was possible?
Oh, girl, I love this. It's so important to reflect on those things. It's
Hmm.
so important to know that my life today, when I'm beating myself up for not having certain things, it's like we're always working to be a better version of ourselves. And I'm not beating myself up every day, but
Hmm.
trying to manage my mind around that. It's like, hey, remember that gratitude of my life today was once a dream, to an
It was
old
once
version.
a dream.
Yeah, it was. My life today was once a dream. I mean, the thing that I'm most proud of, I do my sobriety and continued sobriety, but being able to have the impact on other women that I've had, and honestly, if it was one woman that even just read one email or listened to one of my podcasts that was able to find a new perspective enough that created a shift that she could show up for herself in a new way. I think I mean, there's so many things I actually am proud of. I do praise myself a lot, and that's something I'm proud of too. I have the ability to really look at my accomplishments. Um, but to be able to have that kind of impact on, and not even know what the ripple effect is, because I know generationally it changes things when women, I really believe that the mental well-being of a woman is the foundation of, an abundant family, an abundant community, an abundant life. And so I think that the mental well-being of women is the most important thing because it impacts the men, it impacts the
Hmm.
children, it impacts everything.
Yeah.
So being able to have a direct impact with that in life, in this world, is probably the thing that I'm the most proud of,
Yeah,
and the
I
ripple
love
effect
that.
that that has.
And I agree. Like, honestly, everything does start with a woman. Even life itself
Yeah.
starts with a woman. And there was one thing that it was actually my husband sent me that he heard. Well, he sent it to me through different people who were talking about this. Is that whatever it is that you bring home and you give your woman, she will multiply it. So meaning that you give her an asshole, she'll multiply that back to you, and she'll give that back to you, right? You give her love, she will multiply that and give that back to you. You give her one seed, she will multiply that into multiple cells and then give you a child. Right? You
Mm.
give her ingredients and then she'll make you a witch brew in the kitchen called soup or stew or whatever it is, a meal.
Right.
Right? That's a
I
witch brew
love
right there.
that.
Because what is a witch brew? You literally put spices, meat, right, ingredients in that witch brew, and then you consume it.
Right. You get a
That is what
meal.
we all do in the kitchen. We're like, this is what cooking is.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Alchemy is beautiful. Yeah. It's
right.
magical.
Exactly. So thank you so much, Mary, for sharing your story, your light, your your joy that I can clearly feel as well. And I know so many feel seen in your words and your journey and your experience. And those of you who are listening, if you love this episode, share it with a friend who is ready to get their shit together and come hang with us inside this podcast. Come check it out. See what else is there for you. Whose else's story might resonate with you. Um, because there's so much more to that we can learn from each and every person that we interact with. And interaction necessarily mean like how me and Mary are interacting. You ladies can interact as well in the comments because you also don't know the ripple effect of your comment that
Yeah.
can have on somebody else who is there coming behind you to watch and listen to this podcast. And this is where conversations like this can turn into lifelong sisterhood as well. You don't know where that can lead you. So make sure you also subscribe to the podcast, Get Your Shit Together podcast, and not miss an episode. And as this one as well is pre-recorded, some are live on my personal Facebook page. So you wanna be on all of them. You want to be if you want to be in the know, right? With the podcast, you can have a little notification that tells you new podcast has been uploading when it's there. Listen and tune in. And then when the woman that comes on that really captures you in a way of you are not just hearing her in your head, you're hearing her in your heart. I
Mm.
want you to follow that, which means follow that woman, listen to her, right? If that's Mary, follow her, listen to her, see what's in it for you, because there's a reason why she speaks to your heart and not your head. Those are the type of people that will literally change your world if you let it.
Mm.
Meaning that they're also going to be sharing things with you. Like Mary has shared so much wisdom and golden nuggets with you that you can take them and do something with them, or you can just take them and put them away somewhere where you're going to forget where they are and you forget what they are as well. So anything that you feel like, my favorite question is, what is your biggest takeaway?
Mm.
When you recognize what that takeaway is, I want you to recognize what an action step you would take to solidify this takeaway. Because
Yeah.
often our takeaways are a realization, your big aha moment, and it comes with, okay, now I realize it. Now what can I do with it? So what is that one small little action step that you're going to take that will bring you closer to what you really truly want? Um, and take that action. And I always recommend, because all I can do is recommend. I can't tell you what to do. You got to do it yourself. But take that action today. Because when we put things off to do tomorrow, we get into that habit of putting things off for tomorrow, and tomorrow really truly never comes.
Yeah.
Which tomorrow becomes today. So if you get in the habit of doing things today, you will continue to do things today, which means every day. But if you continue to put things off to do tomorrow, what you're really saying is you're not really that invested in yourself and in your future. So keep doing these things every single day. Thank you, everybody. And until next time, keep showing up, keep becoming, and remember, you are not behind and it is not too late. You are right on time, exactly when and how you're supposed to be here. So thank you. And thank you, Mary. Hope
Thank you,
to
Pam.
have this podcast, or not, obviously not the same podcast, but another one of these podcasts next time or another time together. Thank you very much. And I'll see you next time. Bye, Mary. Bye, everybody.